Vallabha Girivaradhari. Tight, tight. Jayan Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Srimad Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamadiriyet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavad-yuttama shloke bhakti bhavati naistiki By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam, by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in the best of songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this, on the 16th day of December, 2024 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 7, The Science of God, Chapter 15, Instructions for Civilized Human Beings, text number 42. And Narada Muni is still speaking to Yudhishthira. Okay. Aksham Dashapranam Adharma Dharmau Chakre Abhimanam Ratinam Sajivam Dhanur Hitasya Pranavam Patanti Sharam Tujivam Parameva Lakshyam Aksham Dasha Pranama Dharma Dharmau Chakre Bimanam Ratinam Chajivam Dhanur Hitasya Pranavam Patanti Sharam Tujivam Parameva Lakshyam Aksham Dasha Pranama Dharma Dharmau Chakre Bimanam Ratinam Chajivam Dhanur Hitasya Pranavam Patanti Sharam Tujivam Padameva Lakshyam Aksham Dasha Pranama Dharma Dharmau Chakre Bimanam Ratinam Chajivam Dhanur Hitasya Pranavam Patanti Sharam Tujivam Padameva Lakshyam Aksham Dasha Pranama Dharma Dharmau Chakre Bimanam Ratinam Chajivam Dhanur Hitasya Pranavam Patanti Sharam Tujivam Padameva Lakshyam Aksham Dasha Pranama Dharma Dharmau Chakre Bimanam Ratinam Chajivam Dhanur Hitasya Pranavam Patanti Sharam Tujivam Padameva Lakshyam Aksham Dasha Pranama Dharma Dharmau Chakre Bimanam Ratinam Chajivam Dhanur Hitasya Pranavam Patanti Sharam Tujivam Padameva Lakshyam. Ladies? Aksham Dasha Pranama Dharma Dharmau Chakre Bimanam Ratinam Chajivam Dhanur Hitasya Pranavam Patanti Sharam Tujivam Padameva Lakshyam. Does it say Sharam on there? It says Sharam, right? Okay. Anyone online? Guess not.
Aksham Dasha Pranam Adharma Dharmau.
Aksham Dasha Pranam Adharma Dharmau. Ratinam Chadivam. Vijay Krishna, you're something wrong with your sound.
Pranabam patanti.
Pranabam patanti.
Yes, my internet is breaking.
Okay, try that last line. You got
Param to jibam, param eva laksham.
Shadang to jivam, padam eva lakshyam. Hari Hari Bo. Aksham, the spokes on the chariot wheel. Dasha, 10. Pranam, the 10 kinds of air flowing within the body. Adharma, irreligion. Dharma, religion. 2 sides of the wheel, up and down. Chakre, in the wheel. Abhimanam, false identification. Ratinam, the charioteer or master of the body. Cha, also. Jivam, the living entity. Dhanuhu, the bow. He, indeed. Tasya, his. Pranavam, the Vedic mantra Omkar. Patanti, it is said. Shadam, an arrow. Tu, but. Jivam, the living entity. Param, the Supreme Lord. Eva, indeed. Lakshyam, the target. Okay, translation. Okay, so translation responsibly. The 10 kinds of air acting within the body are compared to the spokes of the chariot's wheels. And the top and bottom of the wheel itself are called religion and irreligion. The living entity in the bodily concept of life is the owner of the chariot. The Vedic mantra pranava is the bow. The pure living entity himself is the arrow. And the target is the Supreme Being. Okay, translation again. Narada Muni speaking to Yudhishthira. The 10 kinds of air acting within the body are compared to the spokes of the chariot's wheels. And the top and bottom of the wheel itself are called religion and irreligion. The living entity in the bodily concept of life is the owner of the chariot. The Vedic mantra pranava, Om, is the bow. The pure living entity himself is the arrow, and the target is the Supreme Being. Srila Prabhupada's purport. 10 kinds of life air always flow within the material body. They are called prana, apana, samana, vyana, udana, naga, kurma, krikala, devadatta, and dhananjaya. They are compared here to the spokes of the chariot's wheels. The life air is the energy for all of a living being's activities, which are sometimes religious and sometimes irreligious. Thus, religion and irreligion are said to be the upper and lower portions of the chariot's wheels. When the living entity decides to go back home, back to Godhead, his target is Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the conditioned state of life, one does not understand that the goal of life is the Supreme Lord. Nate bidu svarta katim hi vishnum dodashiyaye bharatamaninah. The living entity tries to be happy within this material world, not understanding the target of his life. When he is purified, however, he gives up his bodily conception of life and his false identity as belonging to a certain community, a certain nation, a certain society, a certain family, and so on. Sarvopadi vinimuktam tatpadatvena nirmalam. Then he takes the arrow of his purified life, and with the help of the bow, the transcendental chanting of pranava, or the Hare Krishna mantra, he throws himself toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All right, I'm going to mark this. Sorry, there's a mistake here. He throws himself toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has commented that because the words bow and arrow are used in this verse, one might argue that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity have become enemies. However, although the Supreme Personality of Godhead may become the so-called enemy of the living being, this is his chivalrous pleasure. For example, the Lord fought with Bhishma, and when Bhishma pierced the Lord's body on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, this was a kind of humor or relationship, of which there are 12. When the conditioned soul tries to reach the Lord by hurling an arrow at him, the Lord takes pleasure, and the living entity gains the profit of going back home, back to God. And don't forget that arrow is the living entity himself. Another example given in this regard is that Arjuna, as a result of piercing the Adhara Mina, or the fish within the chakra, achieved the valuable gain of Draupadi. Similarly, if with the arrow of chanting the holy name of the Lord, one pierces Lord Vishnu's lotus feet, by dint of performing this heroic activity of devotional service, one receives the benefit of returning home back to Godhead. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmidatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So now it is continuing this analogy of the body to a chariot, the living entity as the passenger, the mind as the reins, intelligence as the guide, or wielder, I think, guide in the chariot. And of course, the horses as the senses. This is also mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. And there's a famous painting of the living entity riding down the rocky road, down the mountain, off a cliff. So the idea is that this idea of aiming ourselves at the Lord is very interesting. We're given all of these facilities, namely the body, the higher intelligence, the human form, and the senses, which are also essential. We have spiritual senses. These material senses are imitations, they're covering. But they can be spiritualized. Atakshi Krishna namadi nambave grayam indriyai sevan mukha hijevado swayameva spuratyada. That with these material senses that we have, which are covered, we cannot understand the name, form, qualities, pastimes of the Lord. Namadi means name, etc. Atakshi Krishna namadi nambave grayam indriyai. They can't be grasped. We have this word in English called to grasp, which means to understand. So it's reflected in Sanskrit in the word grayam. The same idea is that we can't grasp it, we can't understand the transcendental form, qualities, name, pastimes of Krishna. That's, I think, understood. But if, beginning with the service of the tongue, by chanting and taking prasadam, we purify those senses, then we can perceive Krishna. Then Krishna reveals himself proportionally to our purification in these very senses. And this is a essential basis or basic, say, feature of reality that allows this process of bhakti yoga to go on. Because unlike the yoga Krishna describes in the 6th chapter, which is one of you're going to a secluded place, so you won't be bothered. You're trying to control your mind and senses by your will, right? And the mind can be the worst enemy and the best friend, depending on if you can control it. It can become your friend if it spontaneously thinks of Krishna. Then the mind is your best friend. So it's kind of an artificial process. It's not organic. It's not something that you can continue to do forever. But this chanting of Hare Krishna, it's definitely going on in the spiritual world also, because it's simple glorification of Krishna. It's expanded into all different varieties of glorification, but it's the same principle. The cooking, from reading the Bhagavatam and the writings of the Goswamis, that there's a whole lot of cooking going on in Goloka Vrindavan. Every day Yashodamati, she invites Radharani to come and cook for Krishna, because she knows that he's most expert and Krishna is most pleased with her cooking. So that cooking is going on. It's going on here. It's going on there. So the process of bhakti yoga is organic. It's more natural because it engages our existing body, mind, senses, our attachments, everything. They have to be purified, redirected, but still we end up with a form, perhaps a human form. We could be a cow or a tree in the spiritual world, but assuming we're a gopa or a gopi or whatever. And we have senses and we have mind and everything, but it's all spiritual. It's all eternal. And it's all saturated with love for Krishna. The whole purpose of having these senses and using them is to please Krishna, to express love for Krishna. That's the spiritual will. So how to get there from here? Well, this analogy of the rata, or the chariot, is very cogent. So, but interesting enough, the idea that the pure living entity himself is the arrow. He wants to be shot toward Krishna and aimed toward Krishna or Vishnu by the process of bhakti. So Prabhupada in the purport, he analyzes the different features that we have. There's these 10 airs moving in the body, which is giving us energy and is controlling everything. And they're the spokes on the chariot's wheel. The life air is the energy for all living beings, which are sometimes religious, activities which are sometimes religious, sometimes irreligious. So this is where the intelligence comes in. The intelligence is the key difference that we have as opposed to the animals. The animals also have the senses, they also have the mind, they also have the life airs. But the cats and dogs and other animals, they can't understand because the intelligence is so rudimentary, the ability to absorb this knowledge and make use of it. So that's why again and again, the Bhagavatam comes back to the point of how important the human life is. Nirdeham adyam sulabam sudurlabam plavam sukalpam gurukarna dharam mayanukulyena nabasviteditam puman bhavabdim natadetsa atmaha. So who can explain this verse? Does that ring a bell? Nirdeham adyam. This is a really important verse spoken by Krishna, and he's describing Nrideha, the human form. Adyam, the word adyam means full of all kinds of facilities, you see. And it's sulabam sudurlabam. This is a play on word because these words are opposites. The body, the human form is sulabam, but it's also sudurlabam. How is that possible? Well, sulabam means it's automatically gotten. Every living entity eventually comes to the human form. May come through all these species. It may take a long time, but everyone gets a human form. So therefore, it's sulabam. But at any given time, on the planet Earth, say, there's a distinct minority of human beings. Even though there's 8 billion, you know, it's minuscule compared to all the different species, the different bugs and everything that there are, mosquitoes, and what to speak of the fish. You know, we're really outnumbered. Not just in terms of number of species, but in terms of number of organisms. So getting a human form of life is a chance, is the only chance in this cycle of birth and death, for one to get the knowledge and get the inspiration to strive for the goal of human life. Prabhupada quotes this famous verse from Prahlad Maharaj. He's preaching to his father, of course. And this key line, Nateva du svartakatimi vishnum durashayaye bahirataman, and it's 2 lines. So you remember the context. This is one of the famous, times when Prahlad preaches to his father, completely fearlessly, right? So the first verse, he's describing to his father. His father says, how did you become Krishna conscious anyway? So he doesn't answer that directly, but he says, don't worry, father, you'll never be Krishna conscious. In Matyuna Krishna Paratak Svatova Mito Abhipadyeta Griha Vratanam Adanta Gobhir Vishatam Tamisram Punok Punas Charvita Charvanana. Very famous line. So he's saying Matya is the mind, na Krishna, not on Krishna. Someone who meets this description, they can never put their mind on Krishna. Either by help with others or on their own or by meeting with who is taken a vow, maybe not a formal vow, but a certainly internal vow, to try to enjoy materialistic family life. Griha Vatanam. And what is the ultimate result of that in every case? Adanta Gobhir. The senses are unrestrained. They're uncontrolled. Whatever pleases you in your house, you try to do it. And by doing that, Vishatam Tamishram, they enter more and more into darkness of ignorance. You see? And what is the activity? Punak punash charvita charvananam, very famous line. Again and again chewing the chewed. Right? This, there's so many more infinity of ways in which you can do that now, rather than in simple life in say 500 years ago in India. All these video games, you can, and often these kids do become addicted to the video games, and there's always a new video game to look, there's unlimited ones that you can get into. So that again and again, chewing the chewed, and viewing the viewed, isn't a little joke. That's often what it is. Oh yeah. So in such a person, then that's the description here. Not te. Te means they. They, I just described, the materialistic household life, which is centered on sex life and other enjoyments. There's no possibility in that kind of mentality to understand Krishna. So then the next verse is that Prabhupada is quoting here. Not te vidu, not they. No, that's people do not know about their svarta team. This is such an important phrase. Just the word svarta. Let's analyze it. It's made of two words: sva and arta. Sva means your own. Arta means goal. The real goal of the soul is your svarta. So many false goals we make because we're in ignorance and we're always frustrated. It leads to birth and death, old age, and disease. But your the goal of the soul, sva arta gatim, that they don't understand that their goal is Vishnu, Krishna. They're completely unaware of that. So what do? Durashyaye bahirarta manya. The word arta comes in again. Durashya means hope against hope. Prabhupada phrase that. In other words, durashya, great aspirations that ultimately will be dashed because they're based on the material body, which is fallible. So durashyaye bahirarta manya, external goals, not your really goal of the soul, arta manina. And what is the result of that? Bahirarta manina. Andayatanda rupagiyamana, and they're the blind leading the blind. You come under the influence in a materialistic society like this. Your first teachers, okay, your parents, they love you, but what they're going to do is teach you to be a materialist like them. So that's blind leading the blind. And then you go to school, and it's the same thing over and over. Unless you actually come in contact with a person who is a pure channel, if you will, of the truth of the Vedas and of Krishna. And that's where the acharya comes in. That's where the pure devotee comes in. Acharya is a very important word. It's based on the word achar, which means behavior. So acharya has these, I think, three different characteristics. He or she knows the Vedas, the Shastra, you see? And especially the pertinent Shastra, the one, because the Shastra can also be in the Karmakanda, but no, this is the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, writings of the Goswamis, all of the ultimate Shastra. Knows that, lives by it. Very important. That's the Achar. He is an example. And by that example, he had potency. If you just study it in university, and you may know so many shlokas and everything, but you're not living it, you have no potency. You're not supposed to hear from such people, right? Even though they may quote so many shlokas or even chant Hare Krishna. If they're not devotees, then they have some other motive. They're doing it for money or the name of fame. Don't even hear it. It's just like, this is, I think, Sanatana Goswami says, oh God, how's that verse? Does anyone know the verse? What is that? No, I think that he wrote this verse. Avaishnavam mukod putam hadikatamratam shavananaiva kartavyam sarpotishtam yatapaya. This is important because there are I remember this one fellow who's like a professional kirtani. It's really good. It sounds pretty good. Devotees like to hear it. I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but this was years ago. But he could claim, I'm not doing this for Krishna. This has nothing to do. He didn't even believe in God, but he was a nice singer, and the devotees would play it. There's a quality to the chanting, even if it's not professional or, but if it's by a devotee, it can really transform your heart. But if the person's singing, it's a subtle thing. Prabhupada mentions it, this famous purport about how the voice, the very voice of the pure devotee has potency because he's picked up the saffron mercy particles from the lotus feet of Krishna, and that enters your ears and can transform you. That's why Prabhupada say even these little kids who can't understand a word, if they don't create a disturbance, it's good for them to hear, because it has, what to speak of the kirtan, even in Bhagavatam class, whatever. So the idea is that it's andai atandai upade matepi shatan utani badna. So the blind leading the blind, the teachers, the parents, or the influences are all blind, and they're making you blind, and everyone stays bound up tightly by the ropes of Maya. So what's the solution? Third verse. Naisham matis tavaruru kramangrim spishat yanarta pagamo yadarta mahiyasam pararajo bhishekam nishkinchananam navanita yavat. So this brings it back to the necessity of having the association, and I was making the points last night. That can be through a medium, like Prabhupada's books. When we read Prabhupada's books, you get Prabhupada's association. He said many times, I'm in my books. I put everything in my books. So you're getting his association in the best way, the most important way, through the words, through hearing. Now, also, we have so many recordings of Prabhupada. It's good to listen to those because of what I mentioned, the very voice, I mean, I may read his books out loud, but when Prabhupada is speaking the philosophy, he's speaking from the point of realization and has a special potency, obviously. So, but even if we can't do that, and we read in so many different languages, that's still Prabhupada. So this verse says, Naisham matis, back to mati. These verses started with mati, mati and Krishna. Mati means mind. One cannot place one's mind. Naitam is tabad urukramangrim. Tabad means as long as. So yavat tabad, you'll see. Urukrama angri means the lotus feet of Krishna. Urukrama is a name for Krishna, especially Vamana Day, but it means he who performs wonderful activities. Spishati, you can't touch those feet with your mind, meaning you can't. Spishat, now this is a wonderful phrase. Anarta apagamo yadarta. Arta means a value. The value, the arta of anarta. You see? The value of becoming free from your things that are not good for you, that you don't want. Right? Anarta upashamam sakshat bhakti yogam hokshaje. So, you can't get that benefit of placing your mind on Krishna. You see? As long as nishkinchananam navanivana, as long as you don't bathe yourself in the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee. See? So the point is, we're back to the Bhagavad Gita. Tadvidi paripatena pariprashnena sevayat. 434, which they quoted last night in the little wonderful Bhagavad Gita play. So Krishna says, if you want to understand tadvidi, what is what, who is God, who you are, what the relationship is, what the goal of life is, paripatena pariprashnena sevaya, then you have to approach a spiritual master, you have to surrender and ask questions, pariprashnena, and perform service. Upadakshanti te jnanam, he can impart the transcendental knowledge into you because he has seen the truth. Tattvadarshi. Literally, senses have been so that he has had revelation of that truth within and without. So that's part of the Bhagavad Gita, and of course it's reiterated many times in the Bhagavatam, that idea. So why is that? Now, what happens is that your intelligence becomes engaged when you read, right? That's so important. And the intelligence is the key thing that needs to be purified so that you will direct your senses and your mind to move in the right direction. And that brings us back to a verse that you may have heard me chant many times, but it's very pertinent in this context. This was spoken by Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami in the second part of his instructions. His instructions are divided into three parts: Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana. It's important to know what these mean. Sambandha means understanding what is what. Who is God? Who am I? What is this world? How did it come to be? All of those things. And then Abhideya is the practice of bhakti that we do so that we realize this. And Prayojana is the final goal, which is pure love for Krishna. Everything follows from that. Liberation automatically comes in the train if you contain prema, you see. But first, so now he's spoken about the Sambandha in the first part of his instructions in the Madhya Lila. Now he's beginning to describe the process of devotion. And he quotes this verse, and I saw a lecture, transcription of a lecture once by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, where he attributed this verse to Madhavendra Puri. So anyway, it's certainly in the CC, so it's totally authorized. So he says, Kama di, Prabhupada would quote this verse all the time. Kama dinang kadina katita palita dur nideshas tesham jata mahina karuna natrapano prashantihi utrijaitan hadayadopate sampratam labdha buddhis tvamayata kshadanam abhayam mam niyung svatmadasye. Very rich verse. I put it into a poem. In how many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? They've shown me no mercy, yet on I've gone shamelessly trying to quench lust's unquenchable fires. But now I'm rejecting these hellish desires, for my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken. So that it's such a rich verse. So he paints the picture of material life, is that it's just one demand after another. You know, from the time you're born, where's the food? Oh, mother's breast. Okay, now the relief. You know, that's it. I mean, I'm not criticizing the babies. You know, everyone comes out. You go through that, but from then on, it goes on. Different foods, and you can crawl, and you know, and if you're not born into a family of devotees, or if you don't get that exposure, then what is your input going to be? It's all going to be on getting ahead, making it in this world, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Vast majority of people, especially in the Kali Yuga, that's misguided. And I think the vast majority of people in this room grew up in that way. But what changed? Why are we sitting here and there's millions and millions of people in San Diego who haven't even woken up yet? Why? Because we came in touch with the spiritual master, either by, mostly by a representative, but then those precious books, as soon as you read Prabhupada's books, and if you are open to it, this is where your intelligence comes in, that you're receptive, and you want to know more. The whole thing begins with your inquisitiveness. That's what distinguishes the animals from the human beings. That's why, what is the Vedanta Sutta? The first sutta, this one you must know. Come on, someone. Yeah, thank you. Tato Brahma Jigyasa, right? Now, therefore, how do you begin a book with the word therefore? Well, it's understood that you may have read all the other Vedas, and therefore now you come to the conclusion, and now you're a human being, that's another part of it, therefore you should inquire into Brahman. There's a million things you can inquire into. Where is food? Where is money? Where is sex? What's the price of this and that? How can I... Everybody's asking questions, But this is the most important question for a human being. Otherwise, it's a great tragedy, and you waste the human life. And in this age, you're sure to act in such a way you probably lose the human life. You see? So you have to take advantage of it. Don't waste time. So what is that? That Brahman is defined in the next sutra, Janmadyasya Yataha. These sutras are great. They're very easy to memorize. So Janmadi. So we have birth, creation. Then what comes after creation? Maintenance, and then destruction. So who is behind the creation, maintenance, and destruction of everything? You see, that's what Brahman is, the ultimate cause of all causes. And we learn that in the first verse of the Brahma Samhita or Bhagavad Gita. Krishna, so many times. The essential verses of the Gita, the four essential verses, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 10, 8, 9, 10, and 11, begin with that answer. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. Everything emanates from me. Aham sarvasya prabhavo, mattak sarvabhava. And just in case you didn't understand that, he does it from the other. I created everything, and everything is created by me. That's the second line. And then, iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. Buddha, those intelligent living entities, human beings, who understand this, what do? They worship me with all their heart. Aham sarvasabhavam mattaksam bhavati iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. Bhajante, they worship me with all their heart. And what is the example he gives? Next verse, the essential. Matchitta, madgata prana, bodhiyantak parasparam, katayantashtamam nityam tushyanti chadamanti cha. So this is not some dry process of going off alone to the Himalayas and then working fighting against your mind and senses. No. This is, right away he says, second verse of these essential verses, they meet together. So they put their mind on me. That's the whole essence. More and more becoming absorbed in Krishna. Matchitta and Magata prana. They dedicate their prana. We read about the different kinds of prana in life. So that life air, life energy, they dedicate it to me. That means all the senses and everything. And then how do they enjoy? Bodhiyantak paraspadam katayantastamam. They come together and talk about me, glorify me. And the most essential form of doing that is Sankirtan, hearing the holy name, chanting the holy name, you see. But it expands into everything with Bhagavatam and all these things, with writings of the Goswamis. I'll share some beautiful nectar verses. There's Glubjaman verses? There's little verses, they're very small, but they're very sweet. I'll give you an example. Amba vinihitachumba manatadabhimba tatamakalamba lakjayadeva. That's the whole verse. Amba, the mother Yashoda. She's performing, what is she doing? She's kissing Krishna. She's kissing Krishna's face, which has, as we learned in the Dhammadarashtaka, beautiful bimba, fruit lips. And the hair is hanging down on his face, like that. It's just a meditation. You can chant it 10 times if you know the meaning, and you'll see you're no longer in this material world. So there's numerous of that. There's abundance of that. And you can share that with your friends, your other devotees, and that's how we enjoy. You see, that's the ultimate enjoyment. That's how you can give up practically. Yes, you have to eat something and sleep. But you're not being controlled by the senses, as the poor people who don't know these. So this is Krishna describing that. And notice how it begins with the intelligent. Those who are Buddha, those who are intelligent. So that's in the other verse. My intelligence has awoken, and I'm rejecting these hellish desires. But it's not so easy to do that. So he's praying for Krishna. Please, Krishna, give me the strength to do that, and give me fearlessness. This is where fearlessness comes from. When you're not involved in getting and spending and competing with others and developing factions and nations and all this stuff, this is where the fear comes in. But if it's just in any condition that you happen to be, you're glorifying Krishna, praying for him, praying to him to engage you in the service, you see, and learning more and more about him by studying and hearing and chanting and so forth. Then you can actually come to the point of fearlessness. What is the origin of fear? I'm sorry, I'm trying to cover a lot of bases here. But fear is inevitable when you forget Krishna, because he's the protector. He's our shelter. And now you're trying to make your own plan for protection, but it always fails, either individually. Ultimately, death comes and you lose out, right? But for the devotee, pure devotee, death is coming, going back to Godhead. We've seen even in some of our own, Srila Prabhupada, he gave the example when he passed, he had the kirtan going, There was no sign of desperation or fear or terror. I used to work in a hospital, I think many of you know that, as an inhalation therapist, so I saw people die. Most of the time, they're completely sedated, which is the worst thing you want. You got to be conscious, But leading up to that, there's so much anxiety and terror. They don't know what's going to happen. There's so much loss. Everything's gone. But for a devotee, it's just the next step. I mean, we even heard about it. Our beloved Shamali, who had such wonderful facility then. She had friends all over the world. Her spiritual master was calling her every day from Vrindavan. Her father was there, Yamunapati, and she had a very supportive community. So, Yamuna, do you remember? I don't know if you were here. Yeah, when we had this memorial afterward. And he described, he was right there, and it was just like the Vaikuntha. It was completely relaxed and completely at peace. And like the Vaikuntha airplane came and just took her away, And I've seen so many, Radhanath Swami, we were in the hospital room, everyone was chanting. it's a different experience because you feel protected and you feel the presence of Krishna and you have great hope. So otherwise, no matter who you are, how much you have, what your name is and all of that, when you're facing that moment of death, it's a big abyss that you have no idea what it is. It's terribly traumatic. That's why birth, death, or disease is a first thing, it's an impetus for practicing. But eventually that leaves. You're not even worried about it. Okay, Krishna, put me here, put me there, as long as I can have service to you. Isn't it? That's Lord Chaitanya's prayer. So back to our chariot. We're all driving this chariot, and we have the facilities, we have the senses, we have the life airs, the life energy, and if we're nicely practicing devotional service, chanting and hearing and trying to understand the Shastra, our intelligence will be rightly situated so that we're controlling these things. The intelligence is controlling the mind and the senses, and we'll be connecting with Krishna and trying to serve Krishna and praying to Krishna for the strength to continue and progress. So that's what's being spoken here. This analogy of the chariot is very important because we're moving, right? Who can deny it? We're moving on this body. And the question is, where are we going? Why are we going where we're going? You see? Is it just at the control of the senses? Then we're being victimized, you see? But we don't want that. We have been given this body, this human body, and it's suitable. It's, as Krishna says, the perfect boat. I don't know if I ever finished with that verse. Nirdeha Madhyam, there's several wonderful boat verses in the Bhagavatam. This is one of them. So Krishna says, Nirdeha Madhyam Sulabham Sudurlabham. This human form of life, which is automatically gotten by every living entity, therefore it's sulabham, but it's sudurlabham, it's rare to come to the human form, and even rarer to get the association, but we've gotten that. It is a wonderful boat, plavam sukalpam, nicely constructed, and it has a very good captain. Who knows who the captain is? The Guru. Yes. The Guru is the Acharya, the Guru, he is guiding it in the right way. But this is a sailboat, it's not a motorboat. And so it needs favorable winds, which are? Yes, Krishna is speaking this verse. Maya anukulyena, anukul is favorable. Maya anukulyena basviteditam, favorable winds of the Vedas knowledge. So you got the great boat, human form of life, you have the captain, you have the favorable winds, and so it's puman bhavabdim natare sa atmaha. If with all these facilities, a human being, puman, does not cross over this ocean of birth and death, bhavabdim, is like committing spiritual suicide. You see, the living entity is eternal. We know that the soul is eternal, but spiritual suicide means you're postponing for who knows how long. You lose your form of life. It goes down and everything. So therefore, again, don't waste time. Focus your energy without wasting a moment. Try to direct the senses to contact Krishna, hear His holy name, hear His philosophy, act on it, talk about it amongst each other, glorify Krishna together. And in this way, we'll take this arrow of our lives and shoot it toward Krishna's lotus feet. That's what this is all about. And then try to succeed in this endeavor. Okay, it's kind of late. Any questions, comments? We can, yes, Prabhu. I'm not sitting there with the mics. Where are they? There they are.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the class. You mentioned that our senses will be purified and transformed from material to spiritual. And my question is, this transformation will be like a jump or is gradual?
Gradual.
And
most of the time.
And what is criteria that our senses?
Well, it's very easy to measure, how much progress you're making. And the most obvious way is that you're less and less attracted to sense gratification. The vairag, just like it says, Vasudeva Bhagavati. Again, I'm quoting from the first chapter, first canto, second chapter. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Payojitaha Janayat Yashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayirahoitikam. So if one practices bhakti to Vasudeva, which is another name for Krishna, Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Payojitaha, Janayati generates ashu very quickly, vairagya, detachment, and knowledge. You see, they come naturally. Vairam jnanam cha yadahoitikam, just like automatically. So why is that? Because the natural state of our senses, our spiritual senses, we're covered by the material senses, are to be attracted to Krishna. What's going on in the spiritual world? All the living entities all the fortunate souls are engaged in varieties of service to Krishna, glorifying Him and so forth. So that's the original. Our senses are now covered. In a sense, they're kind of artificial. We still have the senses, but in ignorance, in Maya, when we're under the control of Maya, then sense gratification comes in. There's a wonderful verse by Bodhananda Saraswati. I heard Prabhupada quoted this morning in the class I listen to every morning. Very famous. Kaivalyam narakayate chudashapura kasha pushpayate durdantendri yakada sarva patali prodkata dangstrayate. So he's saying there, the whole point is one who has been empowered by the merciful sidelong glance of Lord Chaitanya. That's the last line. Then all of these, this is the effect. That impersonal liberation, merging into Brahman, is worse than going to hell. You see? Because there's no Krishna, there's no soul with a spiritual body, and there's no bhakti. You're just there in the white light. So that's like going to hell. As far as all of the different heavenly planets, like a sky flower. Who cares? This is imaginary. You have no attraction. And then the very difficult to control senses. Durdantendriya, kala sarpa patali, prodkata dangstrayate. Is that the same senses are there, which in this material life is very difficult or impossible to control. That's why it's durdantendriya. They're harmless because they've had their fangs removed. In other words, those same senses you use for Krishna service, and they're not attracted anymore for sense gratification. I mean, I don't know about you, but I ate so many things. I always tell the story how I remember when the first McDonald's opened up, where I was living in Hempstead in 1960 or so. And now we can go have cheeseburgers and fries before we go bowling. And it was just a regular thing we did. I didn't think it was bad. It was great. It was great fun. But now the senses are not even attracted for that. Just the thought about it, turns my stomach. So that's what it means. That purification of the senses means more and more attracted to serving Krishna, and less interested in sense gratification, down to nil.
For example, nice example with McDonald's, but we for example, we don't addicted to take meat, but what's the difference when we, for example, if we have choice to take prasadam or take something vegetarian but not prasadam? And for example, prasadam not so tasty, but I don't know.
Well, that's where you're intelligent.
For example, I want to ice cream or something like this, and this is.
That's where your intelligence has to come in. The intelligence becomes stronger, and even if it's vegetarian, if it's not offered, then you don't want to touch it, right?
But senses, for example, or another example, for example, we eat because of we want to eat, or other situation when we eat because of this prasadam, we want to prasadam. We don't want to eat, but we want prasadam.
So you're saying that there's a certain level where the desire for the ice cream is there, and yes, that certainly happens. But then your purified intelligence has to click in and say, no, it's not offered.
Intelligence is not sense.
Huh?
This is not the one of the sense.
That's right. At a certain point, the senses are still attracted. But at one point, it doesn't even come up. In other words, the desire is not there. If you constantly are saying no, and only eating prasadam, then the attraction will even be lost at a certain point.
No, I mean that senses. What, for example, sense to our tongue. He wants to take something tasty, and if we control by intelligence, this is another way. But you told that senses become spiritual. So our, for example, our tongue need to prasadam. He don't want to eat, for example, even vegetarian things. So this is like a transformation of our tongue, yeah, or no?
Yeah, but the point is, even on the material platform, they try to use this. I always give the example of the warning on the, Prabhupada also sometimes, the warning on the cigarette pack, you know? So you're smoking. I mean, I'm so old, I remember when they first put those warnings on there. I was already smoking, I think. I smoked from when I was 15, so that's in 62, you know. So anyway, the idea behind that is that, well, we finally got the warning on the pack. So there'll be somebody will read that, okay, because, you know, if you're starting to smoke and you read that, say, oh, why should I start to smoke? Hopefully, you know. But if you're already smoking, it's not going to stop you. You know it's bad for you, you know personally, but you're hooked. This is the problem, you see, the addiction. Addiction, you know, officially according to Medican, is when you've gotten something and your senses are so strong, it overwhelms your intelligence. Even though you know it's bad for you, you can't stop it. You need it. It's like, you know, it's an art need, and that's a very dangerous position to be in. But practically, people get themselves in that situation who don't know anything about Krishna consciousness or the process by which you can detach yourself. It's a very complicated situation. But I'm just saying, in terms of practicing bhakti, you know, we have the perfect example of Ramanujacharya, Yamunacharya, who wrote that verse. It's quoted twice in the Bhagavad Gita, where he was a very nice student of bhakti, you know. Then he defeated the king's courtier, you know, his Brahmin in the court, and he got half the kingdom. And then what is he going to do? You know, he's a young man, got half the kingdom, so he enjoyed, you know, in various ways. But then his friend saved him. He took him out for a walk, as I mentioned, you know, and he kept walking. He said, "Oh, yeah, now it's coming back to me," you know. So he left. So then, sometime later, he wrote this verse, Yadavadima Macheta Krishna Pada Vinde, that now, when I even think of all those experiences I had as a king, you know, they have all a facility for sense gratification, sex life. There's no attraction, there's disgust. You know, he's not that it's artificial. Because of his advancement, if you will, because of his purity, that experience, which at a certain time obviously was attractive, is now abominable, and he's turning away. So that's a very high advancement.
This is an example of transformation that he changed. But how I see, for example, my situation, that I only control by my intelligence. That's all. It's not good. It's good. But senses, how to say?
Yes.
No changes.
That's okay. If you constantly do the right thing, eventually the sense attraction will die also. You know, just keep doing it.
Okay.
I mean, keep not doing it. All right, it's getting late. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bo. Sorry to go over time.